following day. It is Thursday, April 18th. And so back today, and here's where we left off. We got a bench full of parts that need to be cleaned up and a little bit of polishing and such to certain things. And then we're going to, so yeah, we'll clean them up. Parts washer, cleaning machine over there, and then we have a clean bench here. So on this clean bench, we will get everything cleaned up and laid out. Here it goes. First thing we'll start with is the direct drum here. We're going to take it apart. Got to compress the snap ring, the return spring to be able to get the snap ring out of there. So we end up with the snap ring, the return spring, and since I put these in the washing machine, what I like to do is hook them together like that. So this way the pieces stay together and it's less things to sort out later. Take the outer piston seal off, and then the inner seal. One thing you want to do with a direct drum is test the splines. These splines like to wear out. These have a little bit of play. I might actually, before I spend the time cleaning this up, check to see if I have a drum that maybe has a little bit less play. Well, here's the old drum, and it's got quite a bit more play. I happen to find a new drum on the shelf. It's an offshore drum, which worries me a little bit. Perfectly fine in a stock application, but you know, I don't know. I don't have a lot of horsepower, but I suppose there's a decent amount of torque going on. It's a 445 with a cam that's about 230 degrees on the at 50 on the intake, and I don't know. You know, I'm gonna try this. Worst case scenario is we lose third and fourth. We're gonna go with it here. We'll try it. Alright, so one more thing aside. Now let's take apart the reverse drum, and that has the Belleville spring, so we're gonna take that out. You know, get underneath. It's got a little stepped edge, and get it up and out, and then you can pull it pretty much with something that fits in there. These have square cut seals on there, so this doesn't fall out that easy. So it's got two holes, 2 feed holes, so you cover one up, blow air in the other one, and then the piston is right up towards the edge where you can grab it easy enough. Take the seals off. And then we're gonna prop that up to, well, you know, one of the things I like to do is just break the glaze on the surface a little bit using the cookie again. There, so that doesn't really rough it up. You don't want it too rough, but you know, that helps the band to seat. Having a smooth, it's good to have a smooth surface, but sometimes they get glazed. Sometimes there's a little something bumps into it and makes a little gouge, and you want to make sure to get anything that's raised up where the band's going to ride. Anything that's raised up will just cut right through the band material. So, you know, this is good. It's not getting carried away. So we'll prop this up where it can drain. Actually, all these pieces here. And we'll take the forward drum apart. That'll go back on the clutch. I'll use my clutch spring compressor over here. Yeah, it looks okay. A lot of times when this forward clutches get thin, they really, this outer lip seal will come up above the edge, and then when the spring pushes the piston back down, it breaks it off. I've seen that many times. Then you lose forward altogether. We'll do a little bit of washing, not much, but I'll show you what I do with the steels and such. These clutches weren't really the clutches I'm washing are the intermediate. Those are for second gear, and they're the ones that are up in front, right behind the pump. And so this is all I really need to do. It's really, there's nothing wrong with them, but they need to get rinsed because while they were sitting on the bench, that's when it really got contamination introduced to it. So I'll rinse them off and let them hang up here, and I'll do that with the other steels as well. It's pretty quick to do that, just to wash any grit from the bench, taking apart a dirty transmission. That second set there, that's the direct clutches. And right now I'm washing the forward. We'll hang those as well, and they could drip back into the parts washer. I had put some pieces in the washing machine already, and that has finished washing. So I'm going to clean that off, set that stuff out on the bench, and then put those other components in here to get washed up. And you know, there's nothing really special about that. So I'll be back and film when I get it all set on the bench. One of the things I like to do is, if I'm not going to put this on the lathe and resurface it, which this one doesn't need it, it's really good, but I just like to hone some of these parts that fit metal to metal. And you can see somewhere, sometimes where it grinds down is just a little bit higher lifted area. It's really not much different than the surface around it, but putting the stone on it is just going to help ensure that we reduce any cross leaks, things like that, or that we don't have a burr sticking up that's going to keep the two metal components from seating together. And just go around a couple times. And that's good, that's ready to wash up. And I'll do the same with the pump gears as well. Just hone them a bit. You can only do the flat faces with this. You don't want to, you want to basically keep changing patterns so you don't really hit the same spot repetitively. Anytime metal goes through and it leaves a scratch, not only is the scratch like a cut below the surface, but the sides of the scratch get raised up around it. So that's one of the things we're trying to flatten out, is any raised up surface. You know, a little scratch is, well, a little scratch is not that big a deal. Because it'll just fill with oil. Okay. Alright, I'll take you over to the lathe. And we're gonna just hit the outside of this, and then probably polish it with some 1500. Alright, so it's kind of a hard part to hold, which is why it's running around eccentric there, but it'll be okay. I just want to hone it a little bit. I'm not really putting more than the weight of the stone on it. That's going to be good enough there. So I'll take some 1500 as well. Now, if you have a lathe, you probably have a fair understanding of how dangerous they can be. You don't want to do the wrong thing. You don't want to get caught in it, because the lathe is made to cut metal, and ripping off an arm is just basically going to be a walk in the park for a lathe. So if you do this, just pay attention, be really careful, keep an eye on what you're doing, and don't get your fingers inside somewhere where they can get twisted up, because your reflexes might not work fast enough to get your hand out of there before it causes some damage. Yeah, see, put my thumb in there right at the wrong angle, and it wants to really kick back my whole arm. So just please, if you do this, use a lot of care. Otherwise, do it by hand. Flip that around and see if I can do the other side. Running it at 125 RPMs. So that stone will give it a square edge. and we just want to take away any micro burrs or anything that might be on that square edge. Just polish it up a little bit. Hit this, go in the opposite direction. Yeah, and that's going to be good enough for this. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, you know, I'm going to clean it up and take a close look at it. I think it'll be fine to use. Okay, we have the majority of the parts cleaned up here. We still have the valve body over here. But otherwise, just about everything's set up. It's kind of set up in the... I like to put things in rows with corresponding parts, like all the pump parts over here, and then all the reverse drum stuff right here, forward drum, direct drum, and then we start with gear train parts and other, you know, hubs and parts like that. The reverse diode, we've got bands, got clutches, some clutches, not all the clutches. I have to go dig out some more clutches. Servos, bearings, you know, all that stuff. We got some new parts, obviously. Turbine, or, well, this is a turbine speed sensor. This one's the output speed sensor. We have a couple Sonex parts that pin with the O-ring. I'll show you that when we go to install it. But everything's laid out, organized. Just gets the makes the efficiency a little better and reduces the likelihood of missing something. Now, so the pump gear, you know, it still feels like kind of a record player, even though polishing the outside, it would work. You know, it really would. It's not gonna not pump. I think it's not gonna present any problem really, but you know, that's just a little bit scored up. And I went digging through my parts. I found a new set of pump gears here, and you know, that's got a nice, perfectly machined outer diameter there, where the other one is scratched up. And so I'm just going to replace. I have them, so I'm going to replace them. You know, these would not be bad to throw in a stock vehicle that's just driving around, but we're asking a little bit more of this transmission. We're going to spin it a little bit higher RPMs and such. So, you know, I have the part, so I'm going to use it. But otherwise, I think we're about all set here to start putting stuff together. And of course, we've got all the hardware set out too, all organized where we can see what we have. We're not digging out of a pan or out of a bucket. And yeah, so things will go together here. Sometimes getting started, I get started with whatever I feel like getting started with, not necessarily working from one end to the other or any type of process, but you know, might as well. We'll do the output shaft here. As I mentioned before, this core transmission was 4x4, and you know, obviously it's not going to work in a car. So I've got to take these rings off. And then this way I can get the ring gear hub on to the onto the shaft here. Okay, so here's the whoops, dropped the snap ring. All right, let's get these out of here. We don't need any excess on the bench. That's going to cause confusion later on. So this will Go up through there like that. There we go. And then we can put on the snap ring, and if you look at the snap ring, the ends of the snap ring real close, probably hard to see. I don't know if it will, I don't know if you can see, but anyway, so it's not just square, they're kind of cut at an angle, and you want to leave the point that you can grab facing out, because if you put it the other way, now your snap ring pliers are going to want to keep popping out. So you want to put it where the snap ring pliers will be able to grab it most effectively. And keeps wanting to slide back a little bit. These snap rings, don't expand them any more than you have to, because then they will bend and get wallowed open. No, that's not wide enough. I'm trying to find somewhere to put this that it, well, how about the ring gear hub, because it's going to have to go in there anyway. But here's something I want to show you. As I mentioned before about some other parts that, you know, they're good, they're an experienced part, they know what to do. Well, this output shaft, it's got the sealing rings on it. You'll find some people that say it's imperative, you got to change them every single time. You know, if not, you're a hack. Well, let me tell you, they can go back to their desk job, because in reality these were doing their job just fine. And what you want to do to verify that they're okay, put the direct drum on and see how much force it took to go on there. These rings are just fine. When you go to change these rings, cut them out of there. Now these are solid rings, and you go to put the new solid rings on there. Now they have to be sized to fit, and sometimes they can get chafed as it's going together. So these rings are going to be just fine, and I'm going to go with them. It's my car, and if I wasn't confident in them, especially with where I'm going with this car, I would change your rings. Certain rings, you really do have to change them every time because they wear out quick, but those are okay. This is the snap ring. It's a mildly wavy snap ring. It kind of does that. You know, it doesn't, it's not totally flat. And this is the one that goes here. So when you're looking at snap rings and many other things about the transmission, you can see that there are witness marks on it. You see how it's dark here where it's never been touched, and it's light here where it's been touching, and that's where it goes in the groove. And you can see on the other side how the there's a little bit of imprint of the lugs. So witness marks tell you a lot, so look for that stuff when you're putting things together, and you want to make sure that that is the right thing and it goes in the right position. So that is pretty much ready there. So that kind of in itself is a sub-assembly. Let's see. Now I put the my rebuild kit is over here, and what I realized is this was a kit that I had broken into to grab something out of. I don't exactly know what, but one thing I did notice is that the ring kit is emptied out, so I must have used that on something else before. But what we will do is I'm going to get the... Okay, well, here's another thing we can talk about, is when you have aluminum pistons and you wash them in a cleaning machine like that, I think we mentioned this earlier on, but the aluminum can get etched, and when you have a seal that's riding on the aluminum, if it's just like on the outside here, it holds the seal, so that's fine. If that's a little etched, it's not going to hurt the seal, but where the seal has pressure against it, up against this inside wall, and the wall is moving up and down on the seal, you want to make sure that's smooth. So before I put this in, I'm going to use some that 1500 grit, just smooth it out, make sure there's no you know, micro abrasiveness to it. Okay, so here's another thing I'm going to do. So, well, before I start on that, I did smooth this out a little bit, and when I first got the sandpaper in there, you could feel it was a little rough, and now it's really nice and smooth, so that'll be a good surface. So I'm going to drop that in there, and one of the things I have here, I decided I'm going to go with, I was just going to use the stock clutches because I think they're pretty good, but again, I had this stuff sitting on my shelf, and I think it's going to be of benefit to a higher horsepower, mostly higher torque application here, is the Alto Power Pack kit, or it could be a commercial kit. They have a couple variations of this. They have just regular tan clutches, which are good stuff. They also have red clutches too, but the tan is really going to be fine. So what I want to do, just in case I have to machine that piston, which I really don't think I will, I just set it in there instead of building the drum. I just set it in there for now, so this way it comes out easy. If I have to trim the top of it, you know, on the lathe or the mill. There's Cosmoline on these. So I'm going to go wash those off. Don't want to have that contaminate the surface of the clutch. And also while I'm doing that, I'm going to let these soak. I like to soak the clutches. It's a benefit to assembling the trams. So as you can see, I decided to soak everything while I was there. Let's pull out the direct clutches. Let them drip for a minute. So in this Power Pack kit, it comes with a new pressure plate, which is good because the other one I was going to have to probably resurface. And this is a thinner plate, which helps accommodate an extra clutch. That's the benefit of the Power Pack kit, is that it'll have, I think, 7 or 8 clutches where there was 6. Let's see. Yeah, 8. It could be up to 8 clutches, so that's more holding capacity in itself, without really putting any more pressure on things to make it hold. So we'll stack these up. Of course, they alternate. Clutch and a steel, and then a clutch and a steel. And let's see what's going to fit here. Well, it looks like it's going to fit pretty good. I'll find out for sure once I put the snap ring in. I don't know if I brought the other snap ring over, because I found another drum that had a snap ring in it. This one is really cooked. Well, let me show you what I do to a snap ring that's a little collapsed. A lot of times you could take it like that, and you can see how it's starting to open it up, because you want it to spring into the groove. But you don't want to make it like oval, where it's going to have part of it sticking out. So that should hold pretty good. And just wipe it off and it'll be okay. All right, let's put that in there and see what the clearance feels like. That's pretty good. I'm gonna grab a feeler gauge just to see what we got. But let's see what's out. I would go with that just by feel, but for the sake of the video here, the recommended clutch pack clearance is 25 to 35. You know, a rule of thumb on clutches is about, well, at least in the 3-speed days, is 10 thousandths per clutch. Now, there's 8 clutches in there, so that would equate to 80 thousandths. So they're putting it real tight. Now the thing is, you know, when you're in first gear or you're in second gear, revving it out, you know, this drum is not applied. And when it's not applied, that means these clutches, there's an RPM difference between the clutch and the steel because it's not clamped together. It needs to freewheel in there. I think having the extra clearance is going to be beneficial. Quite beneficial. But let me grab a feeler gauge. Let's see where we're at. I'd probably want to have closer to 60. You know, they recommend it real tight, but I don't know. That just seems a little too tight. I don't want to have things drag and build up heat. You know. So I have the 2 biggest ones on this little ring here. A 29 and a 30, and I can get them in there pretty easy. Makes me think, let's see, let's try a 20, well, let's go with this, 22, 23, and 21. That's going to be 66. That fits in there too. Yeah, I like it. I like it loose like this. You know, the instructions say one thing, but experience is just kind of telling me to keep it a little looser than that anyway. So anyway, yeah, that's good. I'm happy with that. So we'll take this back apart and build it properly. Grab a couple seals here. Okay, this is the inner and outer seal for a AODE AOD 4R70W. So this goes in here, easy enough. This one goes in here, and now with the lip seal, you always want it to cup the pressure. Of course, the pressure is going to be underneath, so it's going to go on this way. Make sure it gets in its groove properly, which it is. Put a little trans gel on it so things slide together, and also on the other surface. And then we have a seal protector. This can probably be done without a seal protector if you don't have one, but it certainly makes it easier. So this is, out of the seal protector set, these are the ones that I use. This one's for forward outer seal, forward inner seal, and the direct outer seal. They make one for the direct inner seal, but I have no idea why you need it, because you're going down over the lip in a way that you just don't need it. And that's how easy it is with the seal protector. Put the return spring on, find which way the snap ring is supposed to go, and it looks like that. And then, let's see. here. Oops. You want to make sure that snap ring is down in its groove. So now we can start to stack the drum, but I wouldn't go any further than that, because what you're going to want to do is put this spacer on right there, and then put the bearing in place, which is this bearing. Oops, no, it's not. It's wrong. It's that bearing. That's how it fits. Now put this ring gear or clutch hub on, and now we can start stacking clutches, because it's a lot easier to do it. Just put it on this way instead of trying to work the hub down there. Because then by the time you're trying to get it down, you're holding it by the very tips, and it's not quite as easy. Okay, there we go. We'll set that aside. And what should we work on next here? Well, the reverse drum's easy. So we'll put some Transgel in here where the seals are going to ride. And let me grab the two. These aren't O-rings per se. These are what they call square cut lathe cut square seals. They're square on the end. They're not O-shaped. I guess they're rectangle. But they call them lathe cut seals. And I just like to, so I have some residual Transgel and oil and solvent or whatever on my hands here, so just kind of rub it on here to moisten these up just a little bit before they go in place. And there's not really there's not a top or a bottom to these. They can go in either way. It's funny why they decide to do certain things for one drum, do something different for another drum. You know, I don't know why. You know, it's just a on-off type of clutch. But there's a little check ball in here, and that's to relieve any residual pressure or residual fluid that lingers in the drum. Because high RPMs, what's going to happen is that residual fluid is going to get pushed out to the side so hard that it'll actually cause the piston to lift. So you want to bleed off that. But once actual pressure starts going into the drum, it'll seat this ball and the piston will apply. This can be just pushed in place like that. And then, so in this groove sits this round snap ring. Not round this way, but also the profile of the wire is round. So I like to take that gap and line it up right with where that check ball is in the drum. Now, with the Belleville spring, I like to put that gap between the two tangs of the Belleville. This way, you know, what I've heard is that if you get the tang of the Belleville right on top of the ends of that ring, it can actually cause a starting point for a crack in the Belleville. So I like to keep that gap right in between the tangs. And then the snap ring that holds that in is a very thick, heavy snap ring with a pretty pronounced wave in it. And so looking at things here, so, you know, you would think, well, it doesn't really matter where you put it in, but to me it kind of does. When you look at the piston, I think there's more weight here than any other part. So what I'll do is I'll take this gap here and I'll line it up there. And you know, it might really, in the grand scheme of things, not make any difference, but it's the little thing you can do along the way that... I gotta do it like this. I'm better at pulling it towards me. But anyway, it's a little thing you can do along the way that doesn't cost any money. It might not make much difference, but maybe these little things add up to make just a little bit better outcome. I always try to do things the best way. And to me, that is the best way to do it. So I'll kind of hit that down, and then so where it pops up, take the rubber hammer with the screwdriver, do that. Oops. And then sometimes you have to shift this Belleville over, because it wants to kind of migrate up into the groove where the snap ring sits. So if you're having trouble getting it in on that side, just slide the Belleville over. You always want to make sure that you can get the snap ring seated in the groove best you can. Not good enough, but you know, just fully in the groove, because if that thing pops out, well, it's gonna be a long road to fix. Yeah, what else was I gonna say about this drum here? Okay, well, here's the other thing. Here's the intermediate clutch hub with a one-way diode, mechanical diode they call it, but it's a one-way like that. Now on some of these later ones, the later 4R70s, you can actually put the thing, the way they designed the newer style diode, it actually fits upside down. Don't make that mistake, because what's going on here is you're going to want to imagine the direction that the engine's turning, and the drum will be able to not spin slower, but spin faster, because it gets overrun. And what we have now, as you remember, that snap ring, this damaged snap ring here came off, because you can see how that fits. It doesn't fit very good anymore. So we have this nice little product from Superior Transmission Parts, spiral snap ring. It's got a little retainer that'll go on here, and then this is a spiral snap ring like that, kind of like Slinky. And it's lighter, and it it's all the way around. There's basically no gap in it. And it also has this retainer to just really prevent it from opening up. So it'll just work right in here. Once you start it in the groove, the rest of it goes pretty easy. Like that. And then, you know, they say you can just kind of tap these over here like that, and that keeps it from coming out. And yeah, that thing's in there, you know. It's not, I can't imagine that going anywhere. You'd probably have to spin the thing 50,000 RPMs, where the weight of the drum, it'll just explode before this thing ever comes off, you know. So that's that. I like that. I like that product. Okay, let's find the clutches and steels for this. The steels were hanging up. Now, so the bottom, this is an apply plate, and it's got this kind of rounded bottom on it because it's made to go up against the Belleville spring. Alright, here are the old clutches, and I'll have to dig out some new ones. These are a little bit burnt. Okay, I don't really throw stuff away. And when you buy a banner kit, which a banner kit comes with, it's the overhaul kit with the clutches. And when you buy a banner kit, it comes with 4 reverse clutches, which I don't know why they sell it that way in a 4R70W. I don't think I've ever seen a 4R70W take 4 reverse clutches. Some of the older AODs did. I guess I just hung on with that. But yeah, let me put a little fluid on these, and they'll go in place. Okay, so now we're going to go in with a reverse clutch right on top of the apply plate, and then so apply plate, clutch, steel, clutch, another steel, and the third clutch. And of course this pressure plate only goes on one way because it's bored out in here, bored, recessed, whatever it is. It saves weight anyway. So then that goes down, and put the snap ring in place. See what we got. And now you have to imagine how fast the input shaft is turning when you're in overdrive, because the forward drum is attached to that, and this is being held still because the overdrive band is around it. So these clutches, they need to have good clearance. You know, just as important it is to build it tight. You know, you build it too tight, well, you're going to build in a problem. But these need to spin free, and to do that, they need to have sufficient clearance. Which, what the heck? I got the feeler gauges right here. Yeah, so we got over 30. You know, going by 10,000ths per clutch, we got over 30. Let's see if we got 60. Yeah, you could really jam a 60 in there. So it's probably closer upper 40s, 50 or so in reality, you know. And that's good. So a lot of time, the majority of the time, if you're not swapping around parts, you're just taking it apart, freshening it up, you don't have to worry about clearance so much. Now you want to check it. You always want to check it because it's a long way back to make a change on it. Once you get it in the car and find out, oh geez, you know, maybe the clearance is too tight on that or too loose, and it's causing a shifting problem. So check it here, and you know, and this is good. That's just normal how they feel. Okay, All right, so this is the forward drum, and there's sealing rings on the back, and sometimes I don't replace those depending on how good they feel. Yeah, there's not a thing wrong with those. They feel really good. So I'm going to leave well enough alone with those. I trust that they will go the distance. And we'll move on to putting the inside of the drum together here. Put a little trans gel on the surface so the seals go in. Oh, a little bit of black on my fingers. So it looks like we have a little bit of metallic sludge that stayed in there. Yeah, definitely. All right. Let's wipe that out. We want that clean. We do not want that in there. You can't clean everything 100%, but you can try and get close. And that's one of the areas that it builds up. You know, 'cause this is spinning, so the centrifugal force is going to pull that metallic sediment and just make it pack in right underneath where the piston rides. So make sure that's good and clean. I mean, there wouldn't be anything around the inside, you know, the inner diameter, because it all wants to go out this way. So yeah, all right, that looks good. So that's one thing to look out for. You know, you can get everything put together just right, but sometimes you get a recontamination. You get the fresh fluid in there, and it's starting to wash out what you missed at the parts washer, or what I missed at the parts washer, or my washing machine missed, whatever. Whoever gets the blame, I'm the one that's responsible. It'd be up to me to fix it. Now let's turn this around. Camera here. And okay, so there's a hole in the bench. And being this drum has a shaft that I can't just stand it up. You can, but the hole in the bench makes it a little bit more convenient. Alright, here's the forward piston. Let's find the forward seals, which they're over here. Okay. Get this opened up. These are both lip seals. Again, the lip seal has to cup the pressure, so they're going to go in only one direction. And some of these pistons you look at to tell whether they have a lip seal or not. If you look at the profile of the piston here, and you can see that this is higher than here. It's stepped because that lower step is going to accommodate that lip, so it gives it a little clearance for the seal lip. So if it doesn't, like C6s and stuff, they, like an early forward piston, it didn't have a step. They were the same height, but so it took a square lathe cut seal. But later on, they upgraded to a lip seal, and of course you can't take that later lip seal and put it on the earlier piston. And I never tried, but I don't. Yeah, it probably would work. You could probably put the, as long as all other aspects of the seal groove are okay, you could probably put the lathe cut seal onto the lip seal type of piston, but don't try it. Just get the right seal, because I don't know, just a theory. I never tried it, but here's the seal protector for the forward. This one goes in here. This one goes like that. Just put it, you know, kind of even all the way around the outside. There is no check ball that's integrated into the drum. So we just take this, put that there, and push that down. Take these back out. Now it's in place. Makes it easy. So we have a big coil spring for that, and then a retainer, and then we have another snap ring. So again, go back over to the foot press here, and we'll get this put together. Oops, gotta put the pin in place. So sometimes you have to get this centered a little bit like that. And you could get it pushed down below that groove. Get this in place. These snap ring pliers are probably 25 or more years old, probably more like 27. I think I got them when I first started, and they are pretty wore out. I have a newer set that I use primarily, but these were hanging right on the teardown bench near where I was working, so that's what I grabbed. So anyway, you want to make sure that that snap ring is in place, and then come back up with this and make sure these 4 tangs are on, not underneath, but on the outside or the OD of the snap ring, because those tangs are going to be a stopper for centrifugal force trying to open up the snap ring when this drum is spun at high speed. Alright, back at the hole in the bench. And let me grab the steels and some clutches. Steels were hanging in the parts washer. They've dripped dry. So what goes in first is the wavy. As you can see, it's wavy. I don't know if you can see it, but it is. And then a flat steel goes on top of that. We'll grab a clutch. And then another steel. Clutch. And a steel. And there are a few burn marks in these steels, but not enough to really condemn them. Okay. Now, on a situation like this, so this snap ring opening is right here, and to me, I think it's ideal, or best case scenario. It might not make any difference, but it's just best case scenario here is to put this one opposite that as much as you can. In this way, it just creates or helps with balance. Now this drum, offhand, I don't know what the recommended clearances are, but this one does need to be loose. More than 10 thousandths per clutch, because this needs to spin free when it's in overdrive. This drum releases. Forward drums and most other transmissions don't release you know, in a certain gear, but this one does. You know, to to get overdrive, fourth gear overdrive. The forward drum releases as the overdrive band is coming on. So anyway, we're going to call that done. Just to make things go together a little easier, we're going to put some trans gel on these sealing rings. Okay, what are we going to work on next? Okay, let's work on the pump. And I said I was going to replace that pump bushing, and here it is. Let's go ahead and do that. Here we are at the arbor press, and we are going to change some bushings here. Alright, so we're going to get some spacer here, and we'll set that on there, and then we're going to push out the old bushing. Okay, so here's a bushing driver for that, and bushing driver, and then the handle, and then so we'll push that out, take this up and out of the way, move that over, and oh, come on. Sometimes it'd be nice to have three hands, but anyway, here's the old bushing. So here's the old bushing. That's 4R70W. And see this one? Slightly taller, same outer diameter, same inner diameter. This is a C6 pump bushing. So we're going to put that in instead of another 4R70W bushing. Now these bushings have a seam, and these bushings get staked when they go in, and you just don't want to put the seam where where you're going to stake it. And there's some other aspects here, like this oil groove. A lot of times people put it just right up here. I guess that, I don't know. I've heard that put them up here, put them down here, and other people say it never makes a difference. So, I just tend to like to put them somewhere in this area, and things seem to work okay. Okay, so now instead of using that bushing driver that fits, we're going to use one that goes over the top. So this way, because if you have one that fits inside and just barely is, or it's slightly smaller than the outer diameter of the bushing, you can actually push it through the bushing, split the bushing open, and ruin it. So we start with one that's bigger, and then we'll take the one that fits inside, and we'll just get it a tad below the surface. And then it's going to be just right where we need it. So that C6 bushing has a little more surface area than the 4R70W bushing would. Okay, what we'll do next is stake the bushing. Now, you don't want to use a chisel that's really sharp. A lot of my chisels are kind of beat up, but they work good for this. So it's kind of rounded. You go in there, have this at an angle like that so you don't, mar up the rest of the inside. Give it a good hit. And you can see right there where it is. Now, if things get hot, when the pump gets real hot, this aluminum's going to expand faster than the steel bushing. And with that expanding and this not expanding, it can allow that bushing to spin. So by staking it in place, it'll only go so far. how to watch the correct side of the chisel. There we go. All right, so it's staked on both sides. Next thing we'll do is push in the sealer. I like to put a little bit of super weathered strip adhesive around the outside of these seals. I think gluing it in place helps. Now I'll take this over to the press. I think you'll have the idea of what I'm doing. Yep. At the arbor press, I just got a bushing that was bigger than that. Push this down in place. No hammering it. But if you don't have an arbor press, then you know what? Get an arbor press. It's a wonderful tool if you're going to be doing this type of work. But if you don't have an arbor press, then you can tap it in with a hammer. So I like to put just a little bit of grease on the Trans-Gel on the bushing. Not grease. Don't want to mislead you thinking that you can put wheel bearing grease in here. Don't want to do that because that's going to change the additive package of the transmission fluid. So, but just a little bit of Trans-Gel in there is going to prevent galling on startup. As long as you have sufficient fluid in there, it should be okay. Now we got this stand, and the pump is going to go on the stand here. And the next thing to go in is the new gear set. So yeah, looks real nice. Yeah, I feel better about this than going with the other one. You know, I was about 90% on the other one, but this is here. It's better. Let's use it. Now, don't pack these with grease. Put some fluid in it. This is symmetrical, so it doesn't matter which way it goes in. This one's never been run. So if you have one that has been run, you're going to want to return it to the same orientation that it came out. And that will go there. Now this can only go one way. You cannot flip that over. So this tapered side is going to go towards the torque converter. So it's going to go facing the seal and facing out of the transmission. So let's put some oil on these surfaces down around that seam so it creeps in there. We want to get an oil film on as much as we can. And then the stator support, that's the stator support, can go in place. Okay, we'll grab these bolts. Get them started. I have a gun set on medium, but I just run those down. I'm not hammering on it. If this is your first 4R70W, go look up the torque specs. I've been doing this 27 years. And I have a feel for it. You don't want to get it too tight, and you don't want to leave it too loose. And the way I've been doing it for that long, I don't have problems with it. So that's me. I'm confident in what I do and the way I do things. You know, the desk warrior will be a stickler and say, oh, you got to put a torque wrench on it or you're not doing it right. It's doing it just fine. If it's going to the moon, if it's for NASA, yeah, always get a torque wrench. You know, But look at that, even they have problems. And they probably have a $10 million torque wrench. So, you know, this is fine. This is a car, not quite as critical as NASA type stuff, but you know, you want to do it right. You want to do it once, do it right. If you're concerned with it, go look up the spec and put a torque wrench on it. I'm not really making an instructional video on how you should build a 4R70W. I'm just sharing with you how I build a 4R70W. Alright, so let's put some trans gel in here so that bonded piston will go back in without a fuss. And here it is. Now, I remember from some Ford literature that they say to put this bleed hole. Now, you got to put this bleed hole on top. I've read somewhere that they said 2 o'clock. Maybe that's what they want, but I always put it at 12 o'clock. And never had a problem. We're going to change these sealing rings. These ones do take a little bit more abuse than the Teflon rings. And AOD has cast iron rings here and here. And they're probably some of the worst sealing rings that you'd ever have to put on any transmission. So it's kind of nice that Ford updated to the plastic rings, at least in that position. But so I'll push this where it sticks out a little, and then you could get it out of there. And if you don't have extra rings, you know what? Take these off in a fashion that keeps it together. Because if you only have one kit and you're doing this and you happen to break the new ring you're putting on, you know, you can look at this ring and you can see one side will, you can see a little bit of wear on it, and the other side looks brand new. So what you can basically do is take the side with wear and flip the ring over, because what's going on here is the pressure's in the middle, in between the two rings, and so it's pushing this ring only in that direction, and it's pushing this ring only in that direction. So it's only pushing these outward. It's not like a piston in an engine where, you know, they're bouncing up and down between the as the piston reciprocates. So a lot of times you can take these and flip them over. If you have new rings, put on the new rings. But if you break one of the new rings, I'm telling you, you can save your day if you don't, by using one of the old rings. You know, if you don't have an extra new ring to put on. Sometimes that job has to make it out the door. It's Friday. Thursday night. Actually, it is Thursday night tonight. And this is my car, so it's not that big a deal, but I am running out of time. Again, I'll tell you, it's the countdown to Carlisle. And, you know, this has got to get done, but if it were a customer's car and it's Thursday night tonight and they want to pick up their vehicle Friday, great, we get it done tonight. You know, it's Thursday night, I break a ring, it's too late to call and order one that'll show up here tomorrow, so then I have to go back with the other ring, because we're going to need tomorrow to get the car transmission installed in the car back to the customer. So it's, you know, situations like that that you want to at least be prepared for, because sometimes, you know, I'll just you know, sometimes I'll get to talking and I'll forget to take the ring out of the groove before I put the new one over there. So I'll show you here. A lot of times, I'll get this new ring up out of the way. I'll show you. A lot of times I'll just grab it with the pliers. If I can grip it. They're kind of a tough ring to grab. Huh. Well, here's another way you can do it. If you can't grab it, you could put a pick in there and then it breaks off part of the tang. Now it's opened up. And that's kind of the easy way to take the ring off. But let's get the blowgun and blow some air to get whatever the little piece is that broke off one of those tangs. All right, so now here we go. Now we're going to put the new ring on. Okay, so that's how that goes. Now it's that easy. These are tough rings, but you know, if you want to push this side in and then get that side, and then you can kind of come around this back, those three, you know, kind of 3 to 4 areas, push it around and it'll come in and hook on the other side, and then the ring's in place. Then of course the plastic rings are real easy here. But you do want to pay attention to these ring grooves. These have been known to get a little roughage themselves. Sometimes you could take the back of the ring like that, make sure it's smooth. Yeah, that feels good. That'll be okay. But sometimes they do get damaged, and you can save them if you have a lathe or you have a lot of elbow grease and finesse. You can get like a very small file in there, like as it's turning on the lathe, as this is turning around, and you can feel where the roughage is on it, and get that smoothed out. You know, you just got to be careful that you don't get it curved, tapered, all that. You want to have a square channel there for the ring to sit in. All right, now what we're going to do, I don't think this is thick enough, but we're going to try it. Now, some people might say, oh, well, you should have checked the end play before you took it apart. Well, what if I took it apart and it had a broken bearing? You know, see, you don't get the whole picture until you take the thing apart. So we're just going to put this on here for now. After we get things in the case, then we'll check the end play. But you know, we'll get to that. I'll show you what I do for that. All right, so the pump is now ready as well, and these two things go on here like that. Oh, that's noisy. Okay, what are we going to do next? Well, let's see. Some bushings here. Let's see how this bushing fits. It's, yeah, kind of rocks a bit. Lay that here. Let's see. Yeah, I definitely want to change those. So let's go change these bushings. And this one's a kind of a pain to change, but we're going to change it. So here's my bushing kit for 470Ws. I just buy the bushings I need and keep refilling my spots here on it. And so we want the bushings for sun shell, which we'll need 2 of them. And we need to find the bushing driver, which I just pulled off the off of my bushing driver set here. So this is the driver that fits those bushings. And let's take the bushings out of the sun shell. One thing you want to do before you start pushing bushings on these is put that in there and take note of where that sticks up. It's important that these go back to the same depth. And now on this side here, it goes just about flush. So now it's flush on this side and about halfway up on that side. Now here's the other thing we need to do is if you start pushing on this, especially the force required to move 2 bushings, you'll actually bend this here. So it's important to support what you're working on. Get some support from underneath, and then we won't have to worry about bending the shell. Okay. So both of those are right there. I'll throw those out. And then now if we're pushing from the top, we're up against that. That's good support. Well, you probably can't see what I'm doing here, but all right, so the bushing, it goes in this way, and we'll take a driver that is wider, that totally covers the whole surface, and remember on the inside, this one is about the thickness of this shoulder here. So we're going to push this till it's flush. Yeah. Just like that. Now that is at the proper depth. And let's see, we're going to put this back for support so we're not pushing on the shell. Put the other bushing up here, and I'm going to set the camera down. Oh, right there. Okay. So we'll get the wider bushing driver, push that down, put that back on the wall where it belongs so we know where to find it when we go looking. And then we're going to get about half of that shoulder. And now those bushings are replaced. Now let's see what we get for improvement with the amount of wiggle. Oh yeah, there's improvement there. Oops, stop moving the whole thing. Yeah, there's a little bit of wiggle, which is fine. You got to have some clearance. And these things are spinning real fast in there, and they got to have clearance. If they don't have clearance, things are going to gall up and get too hot and get distorted and seize up. So you got to have clearance. But this part's done. I hate doing the sun gear, but it's got to be done. One of my least favorite bushings to change. Now I have these special chisels like this for doing bushings. So this basically sit down here on a solid surface and start kind of hammering at this one to get it bent so I can move it out of there. It'd be nice if I could just push it out from the other side, but the diameter is too small. But we try different chisel. Sometimes a smaller chisel will make it split better. There you go. So as you start moving it, sometimes you'll find the seam in the bushing, and if you can start getting it at the seam, it will pop open sometimes. Okay. There it is. So we got that out of there. That's a tough one. It's a tough one, but also it's an important one. So it just, you know, needs to get done. Be nice to have a special tool to go in there and take it apart. I don't know. We don't see 4R70Ws like we used to. You know, up until a couple of years ago, they were pretty popular. Alright, so as far as bushing depth on this, there's a chamfer right here, and the bushing is just below that chamfer. The ram of the arbor press is slightly bigger in diameter than that bushing, so we can just use it instead of another bushing to drive it or to start it. And then we'll take that little bushing driver that fits and get that below the chamfer just a touch more. Okay, that's right where it needs to be. Now let me show you one of the reasons why it's really important to get a bushing to the correct depth. So these bearings, these thrust bearings, see, they have a tang for alignment. And a lot of time, now this isn't the correct one for here. Let me see if I can find one that's correct. All right. So this one goes on top of here, which means it will engage in the back of here. So if you put that bushing flush with this surface, now when you put the trans together, it's going to have that bearing lifted up like that. And it's going to create a lot of metal. It'll probably break the bearing during assembly. You won't have any end play in the unit because things are going to be pushed apart because the bushing's sitting up. So that there's a few bushings like that in here that they need to have that clearance for the tang on the back of the bearing. So pay attention, you know, take note of where the bushing is before you take it out. If you have to, you know, make a note, or sometimes I'll draw a line on my bushing driver so I know where to stop. But anyway, all right, so here's this is the two-piece bearing, and the race goes here, and then the bearing goes like that. Let's see, we got one more bushing to change. We're gonna change this rear planet bushing. I have a punch that I kind of tapered the end on it, so it works real good for this. And so I'll put it here off the edge of the bench. Now you want to be real careful that you don't do anything to disturb the thrust bearing in the bottom of the planet, because that'll pretty much mean you got to replace the planetary gears. Sometimes you'll get a little gouge in here. That's okay if it's, you know, got a little bit of gouge, but you know, just get the high points off of it so it doesn't, because it will show through the bearing if you have a raised area. So I got this little half round file. Just want to make sure that we don't have anything sticking up. A little hole or a little divot in it is below the surface. That's not going to matter. That's not going to hurt the bushing. I mean, you don't want to have a lot of it, but a little bit of it's okay. All right, let's, this is, yeah, the only other bushing we might do is the tail housing. All right, so well, let's go film this one too. So we'll put it over here at the Arbor Press. All right, that's kind of a close-up. All right, so we got the Planet rear bushing. Oh, here it is. I'll put that in. Move this over. Shut down. Now, so the thrust bearing that goes up against that does have tangs. If you don't push this down, you're going to have a lot of problems. But here's the other thing. You got to get it in the middle, because the thrust washer on this side, it'll conflict or contact the bushing if you push it in too far. So you got to have that bushing right in the middle. Just be careful about bushing depth. Very important. These are the pitfalls you want to avoid.